All right. So again, thanks for being on the call. For those I haven't met directly, my name's Kevin Donovan. I'm the director for Worthington United. This is my 5th year. We're going on year 6 coming up in the fall, which is exciting. The momentum I feel like we're building, I'm excited about. The main thing for the call, like we just shared, is to share the change to the U11 through U14 age groups. So we're going to start there and just kind of give you the broad strokes and some of the reasons why. And then some specifics we're going to share. By the end of the week, we'll have a 2-page document that kind of line items out some of the specifics that you may see with the change towards the new GDA. So as was in the email, the U11 through U14 age groups will now, from here forward, we're going to refer to them as our United 94 Growth and Development Academy. Ultimately, the reason for pushing the change was the success that we're seeing in this model in our academy and our U8s, 9s, and 10s is really boring out top talent right now and teams that are being pushed and that are connected and that kind of thing in those age groups. This is an approach that's not new for us. I think is important to state. I think what we're trying to do by is just get more clarity in defining the parameters for how we function within our U11 through U14 age groups. As most of you have experienced and probably know already, we've messaged to coaches for the last several years that age group connection, crossover, opportunities to practice with one another or scrimmage, borrowing guest players, players playing from Navy 1 down to Navy 2 and Navy 2 to Navy 1 and white to Navy 2. Like we've preached doing those things for most seasons as it is. So I think some of the confusion at times has been in, specifically, are there parameters when we say age group crossover? What does that look like? How do we define that? Because it's been different across age groups. Some coaches have really bought into that and gone, deep down that path. And I think are seeing some benefits from that. Some are less so, or they're uncertain in terms of what that looks like. So I think the biggest shift you'll see is us defining some specific ways that we're asking coaches and teams to interact. The other thing that I think will be noticeable from a parent standpoint is there will be I think you'll see a little more regular interaction between teams, but it will not be what is happening necessarily in our U8s, 9s, 10s Soccer Learning Academy. It'll be different than that because this is a different objective. It's a different group of players. There's a different name to this version of our academy. So we still want to carry the things over that are beneficial from the academy while still providing the challenge and the push that the players in these age groups need, which is why it's the Growth and Development Academy instead of the Soccer Learning Academy. So, ultimately, again, I think what you will feel on the surface day to day will be relatively minimal, but I think the impact we're targeting is a long-term vision for the sustained success of our teams in developing here in Worthington, which is really the end goal behind this shift is building stronger teams, building deeper age pools, building teams that can sustain these sort of U11 to U14 ages and still get to high school with multiple teams. Those have been when we've had the most success in terms of being competitive in the history of United is age groups that are deep, that are connected, that work with one another. And I think Rob will share some anecdotes from his experience.
Somebody, and I'm trying to listen to this meeting.
So, those are the big things. I think the other thing I like to share, and I've shared in some emails with some parents is, this model of what we call the academy, where age groups are connected, where they're doing, the same sort of lesson plans, maybe at different levels based on the needs of the team, but sort of the same touch points on topics based on where kids are at in their development. This model is successful all over the soccer world. When you hear the word academy anywhere outside of the US, that's where the best players are developed to join the next best team up. Like the U15 best players get moved into the U17s, and then this U17s may play for the 19s, and then the 19s get moved into the senior team when they're ready for that progression. So, the academy really, if you think of it that way, is just the school where we can develop and grow our players the most, is the way we view it. And that's how we're approaching this. We believe this is a space where the best players will develop and emerge from it, and the connection to move across teams and age groups when they're ready is readily available to them, and that's a positive from a player development standpoint. I've seen videos of like MLS U19 players being pulled from practice, jumping the fence and jumping in with the senior team because they're ready for that sort of opportunity. And those are the kind of cool things that we think can happen in this setting where teams are out on the same nights, they're at the same time as one another, and they're working on the same sessions. So, this model is successful all over the world. It's relatively new in the US. If you look at the MLS clubs that are doing it, though, the success that's bearing out with this sort of, we call it an age group model. It's not a pool training. It's different than that. But you're seeing academy teams here beating academy teams from Real Madrid and PSG and Bayern Munich. It's pretty incredible what the academies are turning out here, even 10 to 15 years into that project in the US. So, this model is not, it's proven to create stronger players. I think we've had times in the past where we don't have age groups that are connected, or maybe teams that grow ability-wise further apart, and it hurts the sustainability of that top team to not have a ready-made group of players to jump in and fill roles. So I do just want to share one internal example, though, with our 2010 boys who are not on the call tonight. Last year at this time at tryouts in May, they added 7 players from the Navy 2 team to move into the Navy 1 team. 7 players, that's like a half or a third of a team at least. And they still won their league division in the fall, despite the influx of players. And I say despite, I would say because of the fact that we had players prepared to make the jump. And Coach Matt knew all of the Navy 2 pool really well, and he knew where players would fit, and he knew which players were prepared for that opportunity. He was able to select players that came in and make a difference, not just be part of the show, right? So there's some examples even recently of what we've been sharing and encouraging people to do, having some success even in our own organization. So ultimately, and Jeff said this on the other call, we want what's best for the players. We are trying to promote an environment that is accelerates individual player development, that sustains, the overall quality of top teams, that pushes age groups by practicing and playing with likability cohorts. Sometimes it's the age group above or below to seek that out, which we're totally fine with that as well. But really, we see this as a progression of being competitive, not as maybe the pool play might suggest, where we're just going to mix and match people in and go play games. So we're excited about it. Ultimately is the biggest thing. And we think it's going to be best for players. And we think there may be some things you'll notice that are newer for you to notice and a little different. But I also think long-term, the benefits that we'll see from making this will be great. So that's some of what I wanted to share. I'm going to let Rob jump in here too. And then as questions come out, we can talk a little bit more about the specific details of maybe what changes might happen as we get into the fall season. So Rob, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Do you want to do questions first and then I can jump in after that?
Sure, that's fine. We can stop there and have some questions on what I've shared to this point. So
I think it would be helpful if you guys could, provide some specifics regarding what it's going to entail. I think there are a lot of generalities without understanding how it's actually going to impact these teams. So it's difficult to ask questions without understanding more what it's going to look like as applied to the teams themselves.
yeah, that's fair. I can share some of those here, certainly. And like I said at the start, know that you'll get like a 2-page document that will detail a lot of these things by the end of the week as well. So we're going to share those things as well, and also know that some of this is still a live document. You'll understand the premise from what's on it, and there's still some things we have to make sure we tweak and make sure it's final. But I'll share that. Some of the specifics, though, that I can tell you right off from the top will be, specifically at least one night a week, all teams in the age groups will get together at the start of sessions. If any of you have kids in the academy, the Soccer Learning Academy currently, every night they're out there, they come together and they spend a long time in that initial huddle, and then they break out into their teams for practices. We're going to have something comparable one night a week where teams get together in that initial group gathering. And I don't think it'll be quite as extensive as the current Soccer Learning Academy version of it is, but we'll get together once a week, be a time for everybody to connect. And then people will go and they'll work on the session plans that are provided to them, which is a big piece of this. Is that, and for those of you that don't know, we already provide the practice session once a week for our coaching staff throughout the course of the season. We send a session for the week, and then the coach is tasked with providing the second session and coaching to the same principles in their next practice or their third practice, or whatever else. So, the rallying point will be getting together, seeing everybody that's there, sharing some of the things we want to share each week, and talking about the principles we're maybe going to be teaching. And then teams will split out and go their separate ways with their teams to work on those things with their coaches. So you're going to see some cohesion in that at least once a night. The second night will be still same night times, locations as the other teams in the age group, but a little more independent in terms of not having that gathering touch point. But we're still going to expect that coaches and teams are working on the same principles of play that week. And when I say principles, as an example, if I send a session that is working on our ability to build from the back for that week, our expectation is that that week, that is what coaches are practicing and training, is building from the back. The challenge level might be different from a Navy 1 versus a Navy 2. And so we have some ways that we can make sessions more difficult or less difficult depending on the needs of the players, but they should all be working on the same concept throughout the course of the week. So those are some things you're going to see, is that gathering piece. You're going to see an emphasis on coaches being in line with sort of our principles of play and our plan throughout the course of the season. Are a couple of things I would say. There'll be some defined pieces in terms of tournament play, how many you have in the fall and how many you have in the spring. And there'll be an exception for maybe some teams that are looking to play a state level competition that maybe want to prep or a warm-up event and those types of things as well. So there'll be a defined way of doing tournaments. One piece Rob is going to talk about will be player development plans, which is something that we've encouraged coaches to do over the last several years, but we haven't always been consistent in delivering those. Those are things that we're going to ask coaches to do for each player in our growth and development academy seasonally. So you're going to see that implemented. In terms of the practice crossover, to be more specific with that, again, we don't envision any sort of, this is not pool play, which is one thing I do want to make clear. This is not a bunch of players in an age group all practicing together at the same night, time, location every night, and us setting rosters for tournaments and games that week or every couple of weeks. That's not the intention of this model. So that's something you won't see with this. The opportunity for players that are ready to jump in and practice or play with other teams around them, we definitely want that happening. And by seeing those players more frequently, coaches will be able to interact and know which players are prepared for that. So you're going to see more frequent touch points, but you're not going to see a generic 2010 girls age group practice or 2009 boys age group practice with 45 boys in the same session, right? So it won't be that sort of idea behind the Growth and Development Academy. So those are some general things I can point to that may look and feel a little bit different for starters. Hopefully that helps somewhat.
Yeah, no, that is a helpful explanation. I appreciate it.
Other questions?
Yes, hi, I have a question. I was wondering when we would know moving forward with before tryouts, who the coaches will be for which team?
Yeah, always a great question. We're working on that now. We know we've already spoken about the coaching plan. Well, most age groups, to be fair. So we should be able to announce that targeting May 1 at the latest. There may be some that no sooner than that, but that's always a moving target, Riley, would be my answer to that too, because as well as our intentions are to have the most of our staff named early, there's always a couple holes here and there that sometimes make you shuffle the pack. But we do have a pretty good idea on most of these teams in these age groups for who's going to be in place for next season. So,
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, I have a question. With this system, would that help the trapped players a little bit more? Or do you have a plan for the trapped players?
so the short answer to that is we have a plan for the trap players every year. It's always a question of numbers, right? For our 2009 age groups this year, we do have a plan for both of those. The 09s have enough boys to have a standalone fall team. In your case, Christina, with the 3 teams in that age group, we have enough that will be holdover 8th graders to be a fall only team. So that one's a relatively straightforward solution. For the 09 girls, a little more creative in terms of that. I think most of that player pool will be in high school. So normally when that happens, we offer sort of a training program and sort of a light, call it a light schedule of games where we use players from other age groups to supplement and get them a few, whether that's league game scrimmages, maybe one event in the fall, something along those lines. But we'll share specifically with those age groups the plan here in the coming next couple of weeks for what the fall trap teams looks like. So.
Quick question. On tryouts, will you be trying to focus on having a number of players that fits a specific number of teams? Or are you going to be letting everyone in or that tries out and hoping then to find coaches to teach or coach additional teams? How's that going to work?
Yeah, so good question. I think that's a bullet point in our 2-pager that we're going to share. And historically, and I would say still, we've tended to be more inclusive of players than exclusive. If families and players want the programming, then we've tend to try to find a way to get them the programming, right? Because I think, to be clear, it's not always about necessarily the ability of players that join United 94. It's the desire of improvement and the amount of practices and the tournaments and the games that players want. So, but I will say, I'll caveat that and say, one of the bullet points in our 2-pager is this program isn't specifically for everybody. We will not form teams for the sake of forming teams. We, best as we can last year, we said this is our number before we're going to move forward with a team, because we can't create a certain experience if a team doesn't have X amount of players that are committed to it. So part of this is going to say, here is the number we need to be at to form a team. And if we don't get there, then we need to consider not forming that team. And we also tell you, for age groups that have lots of players, if we don't perceive that a team of the sort of last players as we perceive them in an age group is going to be successful or competitive in this program, then there's a chance we don't form that team. We've seen it before where people sign up to play club soccer and then they get on a team that has really no opportunity to be competitive or successful, even in the lowest leagues that we participate in. And that's not the experience we want to create either. So, we will reserve the right to not invite players to a team if we don't think they're going to be competitive or in a place to succeed in this growth and development academy. I think that answers part of the question.
Yeah, that was.
I've got a quick question. Just to ask, I guess, a clarifying question about the 2009 situation. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have two different age groups that are involved in United right now, and one of them is a 2009. In that case, if there is going to be a fall only team offered, is that something that you'll have to communicate prior to tryouts, or is that something that you could preference once you've been offered a spot on a team?
I can tell you right now, our full intention is to have a fall only team. So when we go through tryout week, the 09 boys and the 09 girls will get two offers. They'll get an offer for their spring team. So if it's Navy 1, Navy 2, or white, whatever that may shake out to be. And they'll get a subsequent offer for the fall only team if they're in 8th grade, right? So, that's how we normally bore that out. And then, I can tell you right now, Micah, Sean, and Bree have met at least 2 or 3 times at this point. They're meeting every other week to discuss what rosters are looking like for those trap teams so that we have a really good plan for the numbers we can expect and what we can do with our fall trap teams in terms of, do we have enough to form a team? I think for the boys, it's definitively yes. For the girls, we have so many of those 09s going into high school that solution is going to look a little bit different. But at any rate, we would offer them what we're going to offer them after tryouts. If it's a fall only sort of skeleton team or practice team or some sort of programming, we would set a price point and make an offer to be a part of that program in the fall as well at tryouts.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you're going to do something specific around tournaments. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think we're just going to define. We want to do a better job of saying, if it's 2 tournaments in the fall and it's 2 tournaments in the spring, what are our top teams going to do versus what is an event for our second groups? And can we be more cohesive in terms of finding good events that meet the levels and needs of our Navy 1 teams and collectively going to those as a club, right? And can we find maybe another tier event that fits the needs of our Navy 2 or our white team players maybe, and collectively going to those events as a club? I think being more intentional about those types of things is part of shifting to this. And it also helps with, if we kind of have that mapped out for teams, then when we talk about borrowing players, we talk about, players moving up for practices or tournaments or game opportunities. It's a lot clearer since we've sort of helped plan, what's going on throughout the course of the season. So that's really the intent behind it. We want our top teams. I think the 2010 girls are doing State Cup, the Ohio State Cup this spring. Our 2010 boys are doing the second division of that. Our 2009 boys are doing that. So we want those opportunities mapped out well in advance as well. And the one change for them is, depending on their schedule of their league, we may add an additional event if we think it's beneficial for their preparation for that event. The scenario I'll use is our 2009 boys team is an NPL. They played probably 75 or 80% of their league games in the fall. And so this spring, they're really light on league games. So we said, if you need maybe an extra event to kind of get that practice run at a tournament format, we'd be willing to do that. Or we can add some COPL league games in there just so you have the chance to play and not just practice throughout the season. So think 2 and 2 will be our rule of thumb, while also being able to make sure teams are going to the right events and that we're doing it more as a club when we go to these events as well.
Hey, Kevin, this is Katie. If I heard correctly, the intent around tournaments is to have them go together, but how do you run into that challenge of borrowing players in tournaments if you're going to the same tournaments and allowing those players to play up?
Yeah, I mean, if you take 2 Navy 1 teams to a tournament, you know, sure, you may have a situation where a 2010 Navy 1 player couldn't play with a 2009 Navy 1 team. We would target this intentionally more as like that chance for players on lower level. I say lower level, not the next team up. The players on a Navy 2 team could play with a Navy 1 team in that scenario if they're at different events. The players on a Navy 1 team, if they need to help out a Navy 2 team, could do that if they're at different events on different weekends, right? That's more the intention behind that. Not often, sure, sometimes it's needed, but not often do we take and borrow Navy 1 players to help out other Navy 1 teams. We would still be able to do that potentially if they're not all attending the exact same events, but I think it's just being more intentional about that plan. If it's one player we're talking about in those scenarios, we can talk about what makes sense for that player. I think it's just being more intentional.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind, and I apologize, I was late, so you may have already addressed this, but thanks, baseball. It sounds like a great idea and a great development strategy for players that are currently playing at the white or the Navy 2 levels, to have opportunities to play up with Navy 1. What development is going to be happening for the Navy 1 players who are already there, or even playing, an age group up? What are we doing to help them compete with, those other clubs like, Club Ohio and some of the other clubs out there that I know are super expensive, but those are the kids that they're competing against in high school and for college, spots, high school spots and college. So what are we doing to compete as a club for those higher level players?
Yeah, great question. I mean, there's always, that's the conundrum of making a super competitive club. And I think some of this is what we're doing. I think we're telling you what some of these things are. It's being intentional about what events we can put our Navy 1 teams into that's going to challenge them. Considering what leagues they need to be in to progress and be more competitive. Having supports. Part of this is having a support structure under a Navy 1 team. So that as they move up from 7v7 to 9v9 to 11v11, there are ready-made pieces to continue pushing that team's level. That's one of the ideas behind doing this way from the off, is that we can continue to support our team until we hit that 11v11, and we've got a big pool of players ready to contribute at that point. So part of that is built into changing the model. Part of that's built into what we're doing in terms of what we believe should be taught and how it should be taught with our principles. We're being more intentional about that piece. Our style of play, our game model to develop players will be expected to be executed by coaches. So those are some of the things. Some of the gaps. I think in season, Angie, in season, we're doing as much as anybody else to compete at the top level, right? I think that's the big thing I would share with you. Where sometimes it can be difficult to sustain is, and this is catch-22 in our organization, that off-season piece, right, is a tough thing to sustain. One, facilities is a hard thing to navigate. Two, we promote kids doing other things in the off season, and a lot of our kids do other things in the off season, other sports too. So, we have to think about, if we consider offering an indoor facility as an example, or X amount of, training over the course of the winter to keep the progression going. what does that look like from a fee standpoint? What does that look like from an accessibility standpoint to places to actually provide those practice and training opportunities? And we're always looking at that. That's why we've changed and we've offered futsal every week throughout the winter for the last 2 years at no cost. That's why we've looked at an indoor facility, and we continue to consider indoor facilities for ways to have our own space to program. It's why Rob has added so many different camp opportunities in the off season, and Jeff has added winter training opportunities in the off season. So we think that if players continue to play between seasons, what we're going to be doing in season will keep them up with anybody that they're chasing, right? So that's part of the answer there. If a player on a Navy One team at an age group is deserving to move up to an age group and get opportunities to play, we would let that player do that. It has to make sense in the scenario, but this is a player development model. So if a player has outgrown their competitive environment, as Camden has at his own age group, and he needs to stay with the age group up, we're willing to do that, right? We're willing to keep pushing him that way. So it's a great question. There's not a 100% answer like this thing will make these players better than the next players, but we can certainly do some things about it and we can address it. So
Thanks, Kevin.
and thanks for the questions. I mean, these are great questions. Happy to share this stuff at any time. I hope that those of you that have been with us for some time now at least know that Rob and myself and Jeff are very much we're very interested in being competitive. Two, we're very interested in doing things with player development in mind and doing things a certain way. And we have a lot of experience between the three of us, not just in a club setting, but playing settings, whether that's high school settings, other things, we're doing things out of experience and we believe and know that players develop really well and quickly by doing the things we're trying to implement. It's bearing itself out even in our U8s, 9s, and 10s as we speak. So, please know this comes from a place of wanting to push our club forward, wanting to be more competitive, wanting to send our top teams to state cups, wanting our kids to stay together through high school, right? And be competitive in their high school programs, and wanting our kids that want to play beyond that, able to play beyond that. And it's stuff we've done in the past. So it's an affirmation of what Rob sort of built us on, and we're defining it. We're going to be clear about our intentions, is ultimately what the change signifies. So if there's other questions after the call, please feel free to email them, shoot me a note. I'm happy to answer any of those types of things. If there's still something sitting under the surface that you feel like hasn't been asked, get all that out now, because this is the time to ask the questions. And it's feedback for us, right? The questions we're getting is feedback for maybe we haven't clarified or defined a space of what we're doing, enough. So if not tonight, ask them later. I do want Rob to have a chance here to chime in with some of what he's going to talk about as well. I think he can share some of his thoughts on this, and then we'll finish off with just two quick updates about tryouts and another opportunity coming up for this group. So
yeah, so I'll try not to be super lengthy, but it was good hearing those questions. I've been, the last couple of years focusing more on the younger ages in the recreation program. When Mike Hendricks and Jeff Siever left, we had a big void just in Worthington soccer as a whole, tying everything together. So that's where my focus has been over the last 2 years, just trying to educate those parent coaches on that level, providing a lot more programming at the rec level. And I've had a blast doing it. So this gives me an opportunity with the GDA just to get more involved with United again. Jeff Dibdahl's done a great job with the Soccer Learning Academy. And I'm excited to just get back. as a parent, my youngest now is a junior in high school, and I have a junior in college and a graduate of college now. But my big thing for them is that I wanted them to enjoy sports. So I wanted them to continue to get better at the sport. I wanted them to make a lot of great friends, and we wanted this sport, my wife and I, not to take over our lives. So that's kind of the reason we started or restarted United back in 2012 for those reasons. My children, played through United. My daughter missed it. She played select soccer with another club that I was associated with, Wausau Eagles, before I moved to Worthington United, and then put it all in for running, which was awesome. And my middle Keegan came into United when I did, and his group, had all those things. They had a competent, caring coach. The age group had a competent, caring coaching staff. We had a lot of player movement within the age group. We had players in that age group that started on a third team, and one in particular ended up being top 11 in the state as a junior. We did a lot together as an age group. My middle had a chance to play with Crew Academy, not like the crew that you used to pay a lot of money for, but the free academy when the MLS started their free academies at all the Major League Soccer clubs. He and another United player had that opportunity, as freshman and sophomore to play for free and to travel the country, all on the Columbus Crew's dime. Neither one of them continued. They went back into the high school system and had an incredible experience at Worthington Kilbourne. I know when we had high school teams that were part of United, our high school teams were better. They were stronger teams. We had that group make the Final 8. The season after that, the Thomas Worthington team made the Final 8. Our girls teams had strong seasons during that time and continue to some degree as well. I think sometimes people think that, leaving United for, a Club Ohio or an OP, where you end up traveling and going to showcase tournaments and, have a higher paid cost, higher commitment, is going to lead to a better player and a better high school team. But, from what we've looked at over the last 3 or 4 years where we've dropped a lot of high school teams, that hasn't really been the case. Our high school teams haven't been getting better. I'm excited to just, give my feedback. I've really been just consulting with United. Doing team camp has been my biggest thing, but really consulting with Kevin over the last couple of years. I'm excited to work on the player development plan for the players. That's just each player is gonna have a plan from when they make the team, when they come to team camp, for the entire year. So that plan will be developed as a general template from us as a club, but their coach will be the one that is providing feedback to them on a regular basis in the areas that they feel the player can grow in, things that the players are doing well, things that the player can do to take their game to the next level. I'm excited about opportunities where I can help these players. I love to continue to learn how to, just help players. I took a course in the fall, program called TOVO, TOVO, that was developed by Todd Bean, who's the director of TOVO now in Spain. And Todd is a Dartmouth grad, a master's from Stanford, is an educator, went to Spain to learn from Johan Cruyff, ended up marrying Johan Cruyff's daughter, and has set up a program that now is pretty world renowned. And one of the things that they do to help specific players improve is a program called iSkill, which we plan to implement with United in this GDA, the Growth and Development Academy. So I'm excited to have my hands involved in that, to continue with team camp. There's talk that, through the GDA, all the players will attend team camp, which I think can be a fantastic thing because it's a natural preseason for players. So yeah, those are things that I'm going to be involved in. as a parent, I think that those things can continue to happen, that your child can be excited to go to practice, that they'll be challenged and they'll learn, that it won't, absolutely crush your schedule. We always believe that we could develop players locally in Worthington. We feel like we can continue to develop players locally in Worthington. And we want them to continue to have the opportunity to play with Worthington in high school and draw other players and from other local high schools to make those teams better. So we've done it in the past. We feel like a focus towards this middle age group can really help, and it can help build our high school program as well. So I've been a resource. Some families really take advantage of asking me questions. I've been able to help some individual players and families over the last couple of years. That will always stay the same. Feel free to always reach out to me. But the things that I wanted for my family, they worked out well. My children all continue to love sports. I want that for your families as well. So I'm happy to help in any way.
Awesome, Rob. Thanks for sharing. Did that generate any questions for anybody in terms of Rob's role, or the player development plans is kind of a big piece he shared that you'll see, that you'll see implemented from him with your players. So any questions on that? All right, well, I'll keep moving along. Just a few minutes left to share on a couple other pieces for everybody that's on the call. Two things. One is we message tryouts. We'll message a little more direct tryouts. We shared a couple weeks ago that Playmetrics is our new software platform. It'll be for WIB and for Worthington United. So we're incredibly excited about that. By the way, it's a really slick product. It's going to consolidate how much you have to interact with different platforms to be a part of Worthington United. So your registration platform will be the same website that you have your team app through. Communication from the club will come through Playmetrics. And one really nice feature is like facility closures. We can communicate that to everybody that has stuff scheduled in the system. Kind of just mass send that out so you get it. So we're excited on the back end about some of the things we can do with that platform. So you're going to see a different look and feel for those of you that have already registered for tryouts. You've already been in Playmetrics. For those of you that will register for tryouts, you'll see that when you get in. Tryouts are May 22nd through 26th is that week. I know some teams have games that week, so we'll work with coaching staff to ensure that we can make the tryout nights make sense. If there's any overlap. Last year, we tried a new format. We also know that it was, well received by some, created a lack of clarity for many others in terms of the timelines around making team offers and accepting teams and building rosters. So, we decided to go back to a tryout week. We will still implement the opportunity for players, whether they're from our own internal soccer programs or from outside clubs or organizations, to come practice with us starting here in late April through the middle of May. So you will see some players that are interested in our age groups come out before tryouts, but we're going to have that tryout week to build timelines and rally around. I want everybody here to know, our expectation is that everybody attends tryouts. One of the questions I received from a parent in the lead up to this meeting was, how are we building or attracting other players from other area clubs or organizations to come join our teams? Part of that answer is, one, doing what we do really well and being people we should be out in the community. So when people see a Worthington United team, the way we conduct ourselves, the way we play the game, the way we interact with referees and coaches and other parents and players, that's part of the way you sell being on a team at Worthington United. And then if you do all that and you go out and you perform with the ability of some of our teams, that speaks for itself. And oftentimes parents and players are the best selling points for United, because as directors, Rob and I and Jeff are not ones to go actively recruit players. We believe that's wrong to reach out to players that are committed to other teams in the middle of a season. We don't believe in that model, and we won't do it. It's something when someone engages with us, then by all means, but we won't actively go pursue players that are committed somewhere else. But friends do that with friends, and parent friends do that when they've had good experiences. And tryouts is an opportunity for us to do that with our players. If all of our best players are at tryouts and a new player shows up, that's good. They're going to look around and say, wow, look at all these talented players. I would love being here. And depending on how well we treat them and how we act, and are we still holding to our values, that will draw players and families over. So my challenge to those of you on the call is have your daughter or your son at tryouts. Sometimes we take this, well, my player's safe. We're going to duck out. We're going to go do this. Okay, fine. But we're missing an opportunity to really put on paint a good picture of what we're about at United when we do that. So tryouts is that week. You're not gone from school yet. I know that. So you can't pull that card that you're out of town on vacation yet. So we hope that most of you are able to attend the tryout week, May 22nd through 26th. And I'll send another note either late tonight or tomorrow evening about tryout registration. So keep an eye out for that. The last piece I want to share, we have a cool opportunity with the crew coming up that we're going to open up to our GDA, our Growth and Development Academy. So on Thursday, May 4th, we will have sort of Worthington United night at Crew's Ohio Health Performance Center. So the Ohio Health Performance Center is the Crew's new facility, their training facility at historic Crew Stadium. For those of you that haven't had a chance to go up there yet, it's incredible in terms of like the meeting rooms, the workout rooms, the playing surfaces there. The historic Crew Stadium is now turfed. It's a really impressive facility that's up there. So we're going to get a chance to do sort of a tour of the facility. We'll sit in the first team meeting room for a piece of the night as the crew kind of shares some about their academy and their pathways. And then we're going to have a chance to watch one of their academy teams practice, watch a training session out on the practice fields for the night too. So we're opening this up. First, we're going to ask the coaches in these age groups if they want to attend. And once we've gotten through that, we're going to open up registration for families to attend the night. And we'll have an opportunity for a player and one parent to come with. If you have two players, Amanda, you got two players in the program. If you want to bring two players with you and a parent, we'll allow that sort of thing as well too. But we're going to give this stretch of age groups a chance to go see it here on Thursday, May 4th. So keep an eye out for sort of a sign up for that event coming around the corner here too. All right. Jeremy's got a thing to share here in the chat. So Jeremy, is the email you're referring to about that crew event or about this call? Okay. So some may have missed the call. We've got it recorded. We'll share it. We'll make sure people have access to the recording after tonight. We'll make sure it gets out to all coaches and admins so it can be shared with the teams and the players and families as well. Ultimately this, our desire is to see our program improve. Our desire is to be a great environment for player development, for stronger teams. Again, our end goal, we would love to see our teams stay together and build with, 6 players from Thomas and 6 from Kilbourne and a few from Worthington Christian if you're there, a few from surrounding areas, the Olentangies or the Westervilles or the Upper Arlingtons and Grandviews and create these incredible experiences for teams that can stay competitive without seeking a different model of doing it. we believe that can happen here, and we've done it in the past when teams buy in and commit to that. And so we're committed to pushing the envelope competitively, and we think we can do it being true to who we are in terms of Worthington, and allowing, like what Rob talked about, family time, players to do multiple sports, convenience of driving 5 minutes instead of a half hour. I think there's a lot of things we can provide here, and this model, in my viewpoint, will do nothing but push that forward. So, if you have questions, please ask. I'm available. Rob's made himself available as well tonight. If you guys need something or have more questions, then reach out. Otherwise, we'll share the recording after tonight. We'll share that 2-page document once we put the little final touches on, and we'll get that out by the end of the week here by Friday. And if you have other questions from there, feel free to engage and ask as well. I'll stick around for a few minutes if anyone wants to stick around. Otherwise, I appreciate everybody's time tonight and being on the call, and we look forward to implementing this for the 23-24 season. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, hi, Kevin. I had a question. Last year with tryouts, allowing the kids to come and be at practices, it was for the whole month of May for my daughter's team, and it was really disruptive in the sense that my daughter didn't have a full practice as her team without these kids who were maybe going to join the team. Is something going to be different this year?
Yes. We've talked about, well, our intention is to gather who's interested in doing that, and then, offering specific nights for that. I think last year it was just kind of at will, and we let coaches navigate it how they thought best. And in hindsight from that, we got some feedback from coaches that, having one night where there's 8 players out there wasn't good. There's also having one night or every night where there's 2 or 3 new ones out there wasn't
We
good
had a
either.
whole
So,
month of May with the whole
right.
which is now our Navy 2 team, come out, and my daughter's team, who was like winning every single game, they went to these games, and it was disruptive
Yeah.
for them
And Brian
to have
shared
the
that.
month of May, when they're coming to the end of the season where they should be thriving and doing well, and they're having to have practices with these kids. And I'm not saying this as being bad, but aren't up to par with their play. It was really disruptive, and it was just concerning seeing that we've been a part of United for so many years, and to see this. And I just want to be assured moving on forward that it's not going to be that.
Yeah. I mean, Brian has shared how disruptive that was at times. So, certainly I think he'll have a little more experience navigating that. Ultimately, so you understand the premise behind it, hopefully, is that, tryouts week being such a small window for people to get a feel for an organization to make a switch to is hard to justify a lot of times. So by opening up our teams and our environment a little sooner, the idea was to give people that are not in our environment a better feel for what it actually would look and feel like if they decide to join. So that was the intention behind it.
I realize that, I do,
Yeah.
but after it all happened, I realized it was a whole team. So it was a whole
Yeah.
team that came for the month of May. And they are now the Navy 2 team for her age group, which is great because we've never had a Navy 2 team for the 2011.